Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shara Mondrial from Group 2, and we will be going to discuss the anatomy and physiology of the circulatory system. For the learning outcomes, first, describe the characteristics of different types of blood cells. Second, describe the major difference between the walls of the arteries and the walls of the veins. Third, differentiate between serum and plasma. Fourth, name the parts of the heart and describe their function. Fifth, trace the flow of blood through the heart. Sixth, locate the veins in the arm and explain how each would be used in venipuncture. Seventh, explain systolic and diastolic pressure. Eighth, explain the conductive system of the heart. So our circulatory system is the transportation system of our body, which transfer substances and waste from one system to another. So there are two parts of the circulatory system, the pulmonary system and the systemic system. So for the pulmonary system, it is a system circulating blood through the lungs, which blood is enriched with oxygen and waste carbon dioxide is removed. So in the pulmonary circulation, our blood moves between the heart and the lungs, and it transports the oxygenated blood to the lungs and to absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide. And the oxygenated blood then flows back to the heart. And for the systemic system, it is a system circulating blood throughout the body with the exception of lungs. So in the systemic circulation, our blood moves between the heart and the rest of the body, and it also supplies the cells with oxygen, carbohydrates, and other energy sources, while at the same time removing waste products. So as phlebotomists, it's really important to understand this concept and be knowledgeable about the system that carries the blood that we collect, which is the circulatory system. So in this figure, we can see the blood circulation through the lungs and the body. So on the right side, we have here the oxygen poor blood, and on the left side is the oxygen rich blood. So our blood comes into the right atrium from the body and moves into the right ventricle and is pushed into the pulmonary arteries and the lungs to absorb oxygen. And after picking up oxygen, the blood travels back to the heart through the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, to the right ventricle, and out to the body's tissues through the aorta. So that's what happens when we absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide. So for the anatomy and physiology of circulatory system, so our blood carries oxygen to body tissues, remove waste product, carbon dioxide, and carries nutrients to all parts of the body, and moves all the product to the lungs, kidney, liver, and skin. So our bone marrow is the primary factory for production of blood cells. Also in lymph nodes, thymus, and spleen, there are also sites for production of blood cells. So our blood volume varies depending on the size of the individual. So for example, an adult body that weighs 68 kilograms contain approximately 5 liters of blood, while a preterm infant weighing 1 kilogram will have only 1 milliliters of blood. So our blood consists of liquid and formed cellular elements. So the 45% of blood consists of the formed cellular elements, while the 55% is the fluid portion, or what we call the plasma. So when we centrifuge our blood, yung nasa upper part, yun yung plasma natin. So the formed cellular elements consist of our erythrocyte, or our red blood cells, which carries oxygen, our leukocyte, our white blood cells, which fights off infection, and our thrombocytes, or platelets, the clotting proteins to stop bleeding. So in the hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis, the blood cells begin their formation in the bone marrow and lymph nodes as undifferentiated hemopoietic stem cells. So through the hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis, they continue to mature through different stages, decreasing in size. So if we remember, when cells leave the bone marrow and enter the bloodstream, they consist of mature cells. But if immature cells are found in the bloodstream, this is an indicative of a hematologic problem. So our mature erythrocytes, its size is average of 7 to 8 micrometers in diameter and are biconcave, which this allows RBCs to bend and flow smoothly. And they live about 120 days, once they enter the bloodstream and they are anucleate or they don't have nucleus, and they consist of a membrane that encases hemoglobin or the iron containing protein that carries oxygen. So again, our cellular elements are WBC, RBC, and platelet, or leukocyte, erythrocyte, and thrombocyte. So the main function of our leukocyte is for body defense, while our RBC's main function is to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, and platelet for stoppage of bleeding. So all of these cellular elements are formed in the bone marrow, and for their size and shape, our WBC is 9 to 6 micrometers, different size, shape, color, and has nucleus, while our RBC is 6 to 7 micrometers and are biconcave disc. Normally, they don't have nucleus in mature cells found in the bloodstream, and for platelet, 1 to 4 micrometers, and they are fragments of megakaryocytes. And for their lifespan, the WBC varies. The RBC is 100 to 20 days and the platelet 9 to 12 days. And we have 3,500 to 11,000 per cubic millimeter of WBC in our body, and for RBC, we have 3.8 to 5.10 million per cubic millimeter. That's the normal, should be the normal count of RBC found in our body. And for platelet, we have 150,000 to 400,000 per cubic millimeter. So for the removal, WBC and RBC are removed in bone marrow, liver, and spleen, while the platelet is in the spleen.
Hi, good morning. My name is Christine Angelica Anambrosio, and this will be my report. So, erythrocytes are commonly known as a red blood cell, or RBC, are anucleate biconcave cells filled with hemoglobin. So, mature erythrocytes have no nucleus. This cell consists of a membrane that encases hemoglobin. So, hemoglobin, it is the iron-containing pigment of the RBCs. So hemoglobin holds oxygen molecules that were absorbed through the membrane as the erythrocytes pass through the lungs. So the hemoglobin then releases the oxygen to tissues and brings carbon dioxide back to the lungs to be released as a waste product. So a person who is anemic has too little hemoglobin, and many individuals with anemia also have a decreased number of erythrocytes. Alright, so next one we have leukocytes. It is a type of blood cell that is made in the bone marrow and found in the blood and lymph tissues. So leukocytes are part of the body's immune system. They help the body fight infection and other diseases. So bone marrow and lymph nodes produce the leukocytes, and leukocytes start as undifferentiated stem cell just like the erythrocytes, and then form into blast cells, maturing through several stages until they are released into the blood as mature cells, and they also vary greatly in size. For this example, we have neutrophil. Cytoplasm stains pale pink and contains fine granules, functions as the phagocytes at active sites of infection. Next one, we have lymphocytes. Cytoplasm is pale blue, function as part of the immune system. Monocytes next is the largest white blood cells, function as macrophage, important in fighting chronic infection. Next one, we have eosinophils. It is a red core cytoplasmic granules, a function to kill parasitic worms and play a role in allergy attacks. Next one, we have basophils. It is a sparse but large blue-purple granules. It releases histamine.
Hi, my name is J-Rafael Romares. So what is artery? Artery has a thick wall that helps it withstand the pressure of the pumping heart. And arteries are constantly expanding and contracting and therefore have a thicker, stronger wall. The arteries start branching off to form arterioles that branch even more to become capillaries. Then capillaries start forming together to create venules. Then the venules become a vein. So the blood flows through the body. It follows by the path of artery, capillary, then vein. So, at the same time, carbon dioxide is being absorbed by the blood and then transported to the lungs to be exhaled as a waste product. The flow of the blood also regulates body temperatures. So when the body gets warm, the capillaries in the extremities dilate or enlarge in diameter and let off heat. This process then cools the body. If the body becomes cold, the capillaries constrict. Constrict means get smaller in diameter and less blood flows through, therefore conserving heat for the rest of the body. Then, as already explained, the form elements of the blood make up only 45% for the total volume. Then the remaining 55% is liquid. So in the body, the liquid portion is called plasma. So when the blood is removed from the body, the blood clots and the liquid portion is called serum. The clot contains all the former elements intertwined together in a fibrin mass. Blood that is following through the body contains a protein called fibrinogen. So we can see the pictures that it is the blood flow toward the heart. In the upper part, we can see that the valve opened to allow for venous blood flow. In the lower part, the valve closed to prevent venous backflow. So we can see the pictures that the right side is the vein and the left side is the artery. So artery has elastic fibers but vein has no elastic fibers. Then vein has valve but the artery has no valve. But in the middle, it is the endothelium. And they have both tunica interna or intima, tunica media smooth muscle, and tunica externa or adventitia connective tissue. Types of blood vessels and their general structures. We can see the pictures that it has artery, vein, and capillary. So the capillary has lumen, but the artery and vein has no lumen. And the similarities of artery and vein are they have tunica media or muscle tissue, tunica adventitia or externa or connective tissue, and artery, vein, capillary has the same endothelium. They have endothelium, but in the artery has internal elastic membrane and external elastic membrane. Different types of blood vessels and their cross-sectional views. 1. Uncoagulated blood. 2. Calcium utilized. 3. Prothrombin converts to thrombin. 4. Fibrinogen converts to fibrin. 5. Clot formation with serum extracted. Centrifuge. Centrifuge is a carrier hold the tube of blood in an upright motion. It is an instrument to speed the removal of serum. Centrifuge balance. So, the picture shows the balanced load top view of partially filled rotor and the unbalanced load top view of partially filled rotor. In balanced load top view of partially filled rotor, we can see that it is balanced based on the placement of tubes. And it is important that the tubes is placed oppositely to make it balanced, like A has 4 tubes and the C has 4 tubes. The B has 6 tubes and the D has 6 tubes. So it is balanced. While the unbalanced load top view of partially filled rotor, it has the same amount of tubes but the placement is not correct. It is opposite but the placement of tubes is not correct. And the centrifuge, we can see we can see in the middle the center of rotations. We can see the pictures that it is a blood tubes. From the right side, it is a clotted blood. From the left side is an uncoagulated blood. In clotted blood, the buffy coat is not straight, while in the uncoagulated blood, the buffy coat or white blood cells platelets is straight, and the plasma, usually hazy, contains fibrinogen. Then an anticoagulant is a chemical substance that prevents the blood from clotting by preventing the fibrinogen from converting to fibrin. Then an anticoagulated tube of blood that has been centrifuged layers the form elements in the plasma according to weight. Then the bottom layer contains the erythrocytes, and there is a thin layer called the buffy coat. So the buffy coat is the middle of the serum in the clot. Then the buffy coat contains a mixture of leukocytes and thrombocytes. On top, all these layers is the plasma layer. The plasma contains fibrinogen and usually is slightly hazy.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne A. Salik, and I'm going to discuss about one of the major components of circulatory system, the heart. The heart is the organ that keeps our blood flowing. It is a muscle that has 4 distinct chambers: the right atrium, the left atrium, the right ventricles, and the left ventricles. The 4 chambers play an important role in circulation, and together they make up the heart's internal cavity. The blood enters the right and left atrium, and the blood will leave through the right and left ventricles. The right ventricle of the heart is responsible for oxygenating blood by pumping it through the lungs, while the left ventricle has the task of pumping the blood to all parts of the body. How the blood flows are through the body via the arteries, the arterioles, capillaries, the venules, and the veins. Referring to the illustration, you can follow the flow of the blood through the heart. The blood that has given up its oxygen is called deoxygenated blood. It enters the heart from the upper part of the body through the superior vena cava, while the blood coming from the lower part of the body will enter through the inferior vena cava. The first chamber of the heart is where the deoxygenated blood will enter, and it is the right atrium. The blood then passes through the tricuspid valve and enters the right ventricle. Since the tricuspid valve is a one-way valve, it keeps the blood from flowing back into the right atrium. From the right ventricle, the deoxygenated blood will pass through the pulmonary semilunar valve. It is into the right and left pulmonary arteries. Pulmonary arteries will leave the heart and enters the lungs. After that, the pulmonary artery branches into the lungs into millions of capillaries. Inside the lungs, the blood will release the carbon dioxide it picks up while passing through the body and becomes oxygenated again. The pulmonary arteries are the only arteries in the body that can carry the oxygenated blood. Once the blood leaves the lungs, it enters the pulmonary veins for its trip back to the heart. The pulmonary veins are the only veins in the body that can carry oxygenated blood. The blood now has a bright red appearance because of the oxygen it is holding, and then the pulmonary veins will enter the heart at the left atrium. After that, the oxygenated blood of the left atrium will flow through the bicuspid valve, also known as the mitral valve, into the left ventricle. The left ventricle will then pump the blood through another valve called the semilunar valve, or also known as aortic valve. From here, the blood will enter through the largest artery in the body called the aorta. The aorta branches to become the entire artery system of the body, and then to pump this blood to all parts of the body, the left ventricle will produce extreme pressure, and the final pump must be sufficient to pump the blood all the way to the tip of the nose to the back of the heart. This is why the left ventricle has a thick wall, and the chamber of the heart has built up its muscle to be thicker and stronger.
So, the heart pumps oxygenated blood to all parts of the body. So, coronary arteries supply this oxygen to the surface of the heart. While the blood is in the heart, it does not supply oxygen for the heart. So coronary veins on the surface of the heart remove the carbon dioxide. If one or more of these coronary arteries become occluded, so when we say occluded, it is to close, obstruct, or prevent the passage, the myocardium now in that area of the heart dies and a myocardial infarction, or what we call a heart attack, results. So numerous surgical techniques can correct these occlusions if caught soon enough. There are 3 layers of tissue of the heart. So we have endocardium. It's a membrane layer that lines the inner chambers of the heart and the valves. We have myocardium, the muscle of the heart, and lastly the epicardium, outermost membrane layer of the heart. So when we say endocarditis, it is an infection of the endocardium. So if it is untreated, the endocarditis can destroy the heart valves by eating away the part of the tissue. So this causes the valves to fail to open or close properly. So in severe cases, the valve may need to replace in an open heart surgery. So there are a variety of tests that the physician can order to check for a heart attack or a heart failure. So the physician's diagnosis is usually not based on one test, but the outcome of several tests. And here are examples of tests for heart diseases. We have ALT, or the alanine aminotransferase, the blood gases. We also have CK isoforms, or creatinine kinase isoforms. We have C-reactive protein, or CRP. We have homocysteine, and a lot more. So please refer to the table that is showing. So for our last discussion, we have the electrical stimuli. So it controls the pumping action of the heart. So the specialized cardiac tissue controlling the electrical stimuli is the conduction system of the heart. So the illustration on screen is the conduction system of the heart. So basically, the SA or sinoatrial node begins the process, which doesn't need outside stimulus to cause it to start the heartbeat. So it is known as the pacemaker of the heart. It now creates an electrical impulse that is transmitted to the atrioventricular node, or the AV node, which causes the aorta to contract. So electrical impulse travels to right and left ventricle. So sinoatrial node, or SA node, then going through atrioventricular node, then going to electrical impulse travels to right and left ventricle. So also we have systolic pressure. It is the pressure when the heart is contracted, and diastolic pressure, the pressure when the heart is relaxed between beats. So sphygmomanometer is used to measure blood pressure. We have learned this, and Sir Earl discussed this in our BMLS 1, if I am correct. So for example, blood pressure is read as 120/80. So the 120 is the systolic pressure, and the 80 is the diastolic pressure. So the pressure are recorded as 120 mmHg and 80 mmHg. The mm here now Hg refers to millimeters of mercury. So I hope you learned something from our discussion of the heart.
Hi, my name is Tessa Perilia, and I'm the last reporter, and we'll be discussing about the arteries and veins in the circulatory system. So as we all know, arteries carries blood away from the heart, while veins carries blood towards the heart. So arteries usually carries oxygenated blood, while the veins usually carries deoxygenated blood. So let's imagine a blood pumped away from our heart. So it will run through our left ventricle, through the aorta, and the aorta branches, and as the aorta branches, our oxygenated blood comes up in our head, because if it doesn't, we will pass out or we will die. So also a lot of blood also will come down through the rest part of our body. So as the oxygenated blood runs through the rest part of our body, these arteries keeps branching and branching until they form small vessels. And these small vessels forms small branches. And as these small branches forms, they lose a lot of oxygen from the fluid and cells around them. So as they lose a lot of oxygen, this blood is now the deoxygenated blood, and these vessels runs through the veins. So these veins is deoxygenated blood. We also have these capillaries, which it is a small vessels. These are the vessels, mga maliliit na ugat. They bridges the veins and the arteries. So as the deoxygenated blood runs through the veins, entering towards the heart, and it will run through the right atrium, through the right ventricle, towards our lungs. So that's their cycle. So paulit-ulit na yung cycle nila hanggang lalabas na naman yung oxygenated blood to the aorta, then bababa naman siya through those veins, deoxygenated blood, then papasok na naman siya through the lungs. So that's how arteries and veins works in our circulatory system. So continuing to the arteries and veins in our circulatory system, we have this so-called the cubital fossa or the antecubital fossa. It is a anatomical landmark to identify our brachial pulse in performing common procedures like venipuncture. So cubital fossa is a triangular fat-filled depression located on the anterior aspect of the elbow. So dito yan siya, naka-triangular. This small area is anatomically important as it serves as a passageway for vascular and nervous structures passing between the upper arm and forearm. So dito. So next, what does the cubital fossa contain? The cubital fossa contains several important structures, from medial to lateral. The median nerve, the yellow one, travels medially to the brachial artery and the biceps brachii tendon. So magkasama sila. They travel, same sila ng pag-travel. Eventually they enter the forearm here, between the two heads of the pronator teres muscle. So if you see parang dalawang two heads dito, dyan sila nag-travel, yung artery. The brachial artery separates into the radial artery and the cubital artery at the apex of the cubital fossa. So yung radial artery and cubital artery, part yan sila ng brachial artery. So more laterally, the tendon of the biceps brachii muscle, ito yung biceps natin, gives rise to the bicipital aponeurosis. So finally, the radial nerve, the yellow one also, found on the most lateral part of the fossa, lies in between the brachioradialis and the brachialis muscles. So muscles sila. So now we also have, so itong usually talaga yung nasa loob ng cubital fossa. Hindi talaga natin siya minsan makikita, pero yung pulse, which is nandun yung artery, we can feel it if we will palpate it. So we also have these superficial veins of the cubital fossa. It's really important landmark, in performing venipuncture. So we have, it overlies the brachial artery and the median nerve. So these superficial veins lie superior to the roof of the fossa and are separated from it by the bicipital. Yung bicipital aponeurosis, sila yung naga-separate ng mga veins. So first we have the cephalic vein. So the cephalic vein dito ascends anterolaterally on the forearm, anterolaterally sa forearm, and it is often visible through the skin. So makikita natin yung parang may ugat dito sa gilid ng elbow. That is the cephalic vein. Similar to the cephalic vein, we have the basilic vein, ascends within the subcutaneous tissues on the medial side of the forearm, medial side. So here, yung cephalic lateral and median, dito yung basilic. And we also have the median cubital vein dito sa gitna, which connects the cephalic and the basilic vein across the cubital fossa. So to sum up, our superficial veins or the median cubital vein, the cephalic vein, and the basilic vein. So yung median cubital location niya is nasa gitna on the anterior flexor aspect of the elbow joint. Ito, sa gitna. Yung cephalic naman arises in an anatomical snap box from the radial side of the superficial venous network of the dorsum of the hand. Ito yan siya. Dito. Side. Yung basilic naman is dito. Dito siya sa may brachial artery. Kasi yung upper forearm nakakonect siya dito. Until dito sa tendon. Yung dalawang parang ugat dito. So, we have the orders of veins as well. So, in venipuncture, we have these superficial veins na pilian. So, our first choice is our median cubital vein. Dito sa gitna. Our second choice naman is dito sa cephalic vein. Nakita natin ito na ugat. And last, yung basilic vein. Kasi it is near the brachial artery. Sinasabi ko, malapit siya sa brachial artery kasi nakakonect siya dito sa upper forearm hanggang dito sa forearm. It is also possible for an artery puncture. So, baka matamaan yung artery. So, pag matamaan yung artery, high yung pressure kasi ng artery, high yung pressure niya, kaya the blood may splurt out. And also, the nerves can be damaged. So, kaya siya last and kaya hindi din siya mahirap magkuha dito kasi malapit siya sa brachial artery and maraming damages ang mag-occur. We also have the wrist area here. Or first, the dorsal metacarpal vein. Back to the hand, it is the dorsal metacarpal vein. And we can also perform venipuncture here in the wrist or the watch area. Pero hindi dito, not the forearm or inside the wrist. Hindi pwede kasi may pulse din dito. Nakakonect siya kasi dito. Sa brachial artery hanggang dito sa wrist area. Yung foot growth naman, ito sa paa, usually sa mga bata, it will be only approved by the medical doctor. So, hindi tayo pwede mag venipuncture pag walang MD approval.